Hi, I'm Charlie Collins, and this is the Donegal Sport Hub Donegal Daily Championship Podcast, brought to you in association with Kellys Centra, multi-award-winning store, Mountaintop Letterkenny, providing 24-hour service, 7 days a week.
And you're very welcome to our podcast here in association with Kellys Centra at the Mountaintop. Thanks to them for their support as always. Their weekend €11 dinners, steak dinners that is, are still available every weekend, so take advantage of that. We've got a lot to get through here today. Later on in the programme I'll be joined by Chris McNulty. We'll be looking back at the Ladies' Championship, which was completed yesterday with 4 finals, 3 the previous week. Chris was out and about at the weekend and he'll update us on all the action, which saw Yvonne Boner score 5 out of 7 goals as Glenfin beat Termon in the senior final. But we're first of all going to look at the men's junior, senior and intermediate in that order, along with John Haran, Alan Foley and Gary McDaid. Guys, you're all welcome. Just a bit of housekeeping to do with the junior. I'm not going to spend too much time. There was one game played at the weekend, the final game. Downings beat Moville by 2-11 to 1-9, and that means that they topped Group B. So that leaves us with this situation for next weekend. The quarter-finals are Moville against Urus, and just down the road in Carndonagh will host Letterkenny Gales. Those are the 2 quarter-finals. The winners of those will go through to play either Convoy or Downings, who automatically go through to the semi-finals because they won their groups. So that's the situation. No major surprises there. Convoy and Downings straight through to the semi-finals. Moville versus Urus, Carndonagh versus Letterkenny Gales in the 2 quarter-finals next weekend. Moving on quickly to the senior championships, the top 4, the big 4, the 4 who got top spots in the league section all came through. Neath Connell beating Glenfin, Kilcar squeezing through against Moville. St Michael's, Gweedore squeezing through against McCool's, and St Eunan's had a huge victory over Bundoran. No surprises in the results of it, John, but in the manner of the results, some surprises, because we didn't expect St Eunan's to win the way they did, and we didn't expect Kilcar and Gweedore to be run as tightly as they were. Is that fair?
Very much so, Charlie. We thought Bundoran put up a better show against St Eunan's. Probably thought St Eunan's would have too much for them at home, and it proved that way, but no, we didn't see the cricket score coming the way that it did. So St Eunan's going well, Charlie. Kilcar, Charlie, I was following on Twitter and trying to follow it in the stream. The stream wasn't great, but it was 2-8 to 2 points at one stage. I thought this was going according to plan, and I had seen St Michael's against St Eunan's and thought, no, they're done.
You didn't give them any chance.
No. Charlie. But watching the game back again, Charlie, they came into it well, and they had every chance, Charlie. They were 2 points down with 7 or 8 minutes to go, plus injury time, with that strong breeze in Tourney. So you thought Kilcar are in big trouble here. But in fairness to Kilcar, after St Michael's got their second goal, there was only 2 points in it, and they caught the kick. They broke on the kick out, Charlie, and they just went through for another goal. So Kilcar, that wee bit of class, but Kilcar struggled for long periods, Charlie, in the second half. Didn't score an awful lot until the end, but I suppose it's a sign of a good team, Charlie. When it's put up to them, they had enough to respond. In the first half, they were slick enough. I thought, Mark McHugh was very good, Charlie, with a couple of brilliant foot passes into Paddy McBurty, and he set up the first goal too for Conor Doyle. He was very good. Ryan was very quiet in the first half, but they've a lot of quality there, Charlie. So but the thing about St Michael's that they had a few players back. I know Michael Langan wasn't fully fit at full forward, but he was still a big presence for them. Michael McGinley was back. Martin McElhenney tried fierce hard. Christie and Colin probably carrying injuries, but fair play to St Michael's, Charlie. I've been critical of them in the past, at times, but
they give it their best shot.
And maybe they have a few regrets. I think in the first half, Charlie, when the game was kind of getting away from them a wee bit, they might have lost a bit of heart. And if they had dug in there a wee bit and kept the score down and gave themselves a better chance at the second half, it could have been a different result.
Yeah. Alan, controversial moment, we have to talk about it. Stonewall penalty. Everybody, I didn't see it, but everybody I've talked to who did see it said Stonewall penalty, tackled by Mark McHugh and Martin McElhenney. James Connors didn't give it. Huge moment in the game.
Yeah, well, it was also Kieran McGinley also came in the side and slid on Martin McElhenney as he was going. There was an incident just before that where Colin McFadden went through and Ryan tackled him cleanly, Ryan McHugh, but a free was given. So then this was 2 minutes later. St Michael's, we thought at the time maybe he's trying to play an advantage. Martin got the shot off, Kevin Campbell saved, but that wasn't the situation, no. And they were also unhappy about a point in the first half. They felt it was wide.
Yeah.
We spoke there, just interesting what John says. We were watching the matchups, and even though Kilcar were getting ahead of steam up in the first half, going maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, when you looked around the pitch, St Michael's were bigger in nearly all the offensive positions. And we said in the press box in town, if they can stay in touch, any sort of touch, when this switches around, if they can go big, there's a big win there, maybe they can kind of gnaw back into this. They conceded a goal probably right before half time with Stephen McBrairty. That probably won it in the end up. Even though Michaels went up the field and got a goal back through Colin McFadden, but they weren't far away. And afterwards I spoke to Gary O'Neill. The whole St Michael's camp was furious, to be honest. He feels they're not too far away in it. He says, if you look at it, he says, look, we were already qualified in St Judeans. We didn't play great in that last group game, but last year they nearly had St Judeans out of the championship, only for Connell Dunn to equalise. They played Guidoer last year, only lost by a point or two at home. So when they really go at teams, they're not too far off, and I think their criticism on Saturday night was justifiable, and you could have a bit of sympathy for them.
Did they miss a trick, Gary, in terms of what John says about them maybe not hanging in there in the first half when things are going bad against you? You made the point here about Glenswolly conceding 9 points down Kilcar near the end. It could have made a huge difference in scoring difference for them in the championship.
It was wild. It was 2-8, 2 points at one stage in the first half, and that's a goal Alan was on about. Stephen Doak came out and he fisted it over someone's head, but actually got caught in a wound. So it did. And now, but to me, Charlie, I think St Michael's, fair play to them, they probably executed a game plan that no other team was able to exploit their physical dominance over Kilcar like any team that's played them to date. So they have I thought that, like Alan's point about, we were talking about it in the press box that evening, the physical dominance in the air, they really made that count. So they did.
John has made the point here several times about Kilcar when they come up against big, strong physical teams. There's an issue. There's a problem. Was that part of the problem at the weekend?
100%, because St Michael's kickouts first half were against a hurricane, so they were, and they pulled a lot of players deep, and they kept Colm Anthony and Martin McElhinney beyond the last 65 between the 45, so they did, and isolated them 1v1. And young Oisin Cannon, in fairness to him, I don't know how he was able to drive the ball that far. He drove it to them, and time after time they plucked the ball, especially McElhinney, out of the sky.
So he first 15 minutes.
Kilcar were slow to react. They eventually put Kieran McGinley on to Martin McElhinney, but even still, McElhinney it's as good as seeing McElhinney play in a long time. But to me, St Michael's, Charlie, were so close. Like I wrote a couple of points down. If they tinkered with the game plan by a couple of points, to me they could have won the game. One of them was the first half. They played Michael Langan and Martin McElhinney inside. So they did, and that was two big players, and I didn't realise Langan wasn't one leg till I saw him in the second half. So I did with the ankle, and fair play to him, so he had to stay inside. But I would have brought Martin McElhinney out around the middle in the first half, because they were playing against a hurricane. But we Carlos O'Reilly inside for his speed, because I know when he went inside against us in the championship, the first game, he could get caught his baller, so he did. And I think McElhinney he did have a big influence. I think he would even have, because he just seemed to be on his game that on Saturday night. And then Brian O'Donnell went off. So he did. The full back, he went off. Conor McShane came on, the full back replacement. He got black carded. So he did. He got black carded in 32nd minute, I think. And St Michael's didn't turn the screw when they had 15 men, and that was St Michael's worth the one, Charlie. Worth the one.
So there's a couple of things coming out of it. They had that opportunity. They conceded a goal at a bad time. There's a bad decision not given in their favour with the point in the first half as well. So you could nearly say, if you were paranoid, everything that could go wrong for them did go wrong.
But they only got 1 point, Charlie, when Conor McShane was off, and what was with the hurricane breeze. And St Michael's are used to playing the hurricane breeze. Like Kevin Campbell, I give him great praise already on here, and he has to get huge praise again. The way he was directing the kickouts was unbelievable. He was calling the four. They play four in the full back line for the kickouts. And McShane was off, so that left him with three. So Michael still had four against their three in the full back line. And so Michael's were standing 3, 4, 5 yards off the three boys. And Campbell was able to get the kick out off. They should have squeezed the life out of them, pressed right up and cut that short off. Like, to me, they only got 1 point from a free in that 10 minutes when he was off.
Okay, missed opportunity for St Michael's.
Huge.
In terms of Kilcar, should they be worried?
Possibly worried, Charlie, but they also got a bit of a test, and they got a test against St. John's, so they're probably finding a wee bit out about themselves all the time, which is good, Charlie, because we can see the big ones that the other teams are having and not getting tested. But issues there for Kilcar, Charlie, but they still have a bit of quality, and they're still, I wouldn't write them off. They've a good. Listen, Charlie, when it was put up to them in the last 10 minutes when St Michael's brought it back to 2 points, they stretched out again. Like Michael Langan got a kind of, I wouldn't call it a fluky goal, but it was the last kick of the game and he drove it to the net. Well, shouldn't have got into the net, but
Well, I think that goes back to the physical dominance again. I mean, Kilcar lacking big players, and I think Michael Langan exploited that on the goal lines, and he also exploited that Charlie full forward. So Michael's used more high ball than any other team against Kilcar this year full forward, and they got huge joy from it. Huge joy.
They won the toss and elected to play against the wind first half. Colin won it, so we were wondering,
sometimes you make a decision. And
if you watch them at the Bridge, they always do that as well. They always play against it in the first half.
All right, Kilcar through with a scare. Gidor, there's life scared out of them.
A big scare. I thought they were beat, to be honest. The game started off, it was McCool's were very defensive, but they were quite economical going up front, and then it was going out, it was 4-4. Then Guidora go ahead, then McCool's got back to 8-8, then it went 9-8, they came back to 9-9, and with about maybe 15 minutes to go, we were saying this is perfect for McCool's. This is how they would have dreamt it, because Guidora were getting a bit snatchy. There was a bit of aggravation coming from the crowd that were playing golf up the road.
Yes. In the next field, as they say.
They had lost. Owen McLean wasn't playing. He had done the warm up beforehand, declared unfit. He was out at half time.
Micheál Carroll's missing from
No
midfield as
Micheál
well.
Carroll, and you thought they're losing their way here badly. Then McCool's get a penalty. Christopher Sweeney was lucky to stay on the pitch.
Should have been a black card.
And then McCool's go 3 up. And the thing that would really impress me about McCool's is like Guidora are quite used to playing at a high level, high octane pressure. McCool's were matching them every step they were taking, and just went to injury time then. James Carroll come on. Ethan Harkin had been taken off. They had a free on for a left footer, nobody there to take it. Ethan came on and took it. And then within 30 seconds it went over from Cian Mulligan. Cian Mulligan was the one player who was always making yards throughout the day, I thought, for Guidora against the kind of packed defence, but they done well to come out of it. But I think McCool's would be devastated, to be honest, Charlie.
What's wrong with Guidora, Gary?
I think that they're stuck in a game plan that doesn't maximise their potential. They're stuck in a defensive game plan, like they're getting 13 behind the ball. They're even Kevin Cassidy and Colin up yesterday, or Ethan at times. Bringing them all back. On paper, Charlie, they're better players than McCool's. They actually nearly played into McCool's hands by letting McCool stay in the game by bringing all them in. If they'd have went with a more offensive game plan, I think they would have.
Are they capable of doing that?
Well, they have the bit. To me, Guidora have possibly the best group of players on paper in the county, so they have, and they're not maximising their potential at the minute. Like Ethan Harkin yesterday, I thought he was their best forward, and I couldn't believe he was taken off. I thought it was a terrible decision, and almost cost him, so it did. And Alan's point about Christopher Sweeney, like, it was definitely a black card. That was to me, that was a turning point in the game. Like, that was the keeper gone. So what and that they would have been down to 13 players, because Shane Ferry got black carded in the 53rd minute or something. So like that would mean them down to 13 players, like.
They got off the hook, John. They'll be happy about that.
As I say, watching on the streaming too, and it wasn't great at times breaking up, but I would have said last week that I didn't see how a team like McCool's could have the quality. McCool's are still a Division 2 team. They got relegated last year to Division 1. Didn't perform at all. But
they gave them a rattle the week before, didn't they?
I know they did. And as people said, maybe they were holding back a wee bit, and maybe they had a game plan. So fair play to McCool's. That's what I'm saying. I have to give them credit, because I didn't think they would have the quality to go down there toe to toe and to lead 1-9 to 9 points with 10 minutes to go. You thought they're in dream world here, but you could just see the wee bit of inexperience, Charity, giving the ball away badly, trying to hold on to it and not being able to hold on to it. You know what I mean? Wee thing I would think on Guidora, Charity, is just don't see the same bite in them. I could see McCool's going over and back, and no Guidora man coming out to put pressure on them. Because you need that bite, and they would have had that 2 years ago, last year maybe. But I thought, no, there's no bite there.
We asked questions about them last year.
I know,
on a number of occasions. They still got to the final, and were within a hair's breadth of winning it on all 3 occasions.
All 3 occasions, and I think even in the third game they were in pole position when they went 3 points up. So like to write Guidora off would be very foolish, because at the end of the day there's only kicking the ball in. But obviously Owen McNeil's Charity must be a serious injury, because if you're 3 points down with 10 minutes to go, you don't bring him on. You must think there's something wrong here that he can't come on. And Michael Carroll is a big loss, because his performance as Charity last year in that county final in the third game, I gave him praise here. It was as good as ever I've seen. And for him not to be part of it this year is a big disappointment and a big loss to Guidora. So there's not saying they're struggling now, but they're not as strong as they were.
Allen, just to mention 2-1-8, like what a performance.
What a player.
It was, and the scores from play were, I mean, it's just a pity that people couldn't attend the game. Like the scores from play, Charlie, were exhibition stuff. Like, it's very, very exciting for Donegal supporters going forward to see a player of that quality.
And conditions were awkward too.
Yeah. Niamh Connell down to 14, owned 2 yellow cards. One McGettigan. Didn't make any difference, Alan.
Well, Kieran Thompson had hobbled off around the same time. Yeah. First half was basically blighted by a couple of absolutely torrential rain showers. Yeah. So it was like 7-3 at half time. You thought maybe Glenfin could ask a question, because nobody's really asked Niamh Connell a serious question since probably Kilcoo last year. So at half time, you thought, maybe there's a chance here for them to just ask that question.
Yeah.
Absolutely just didn't happen. Just were blown out of the water. Kieran Brady went off to a black card within moments of the restart, so it was 14 against 14 then. And one-way traffic pretty much.
As it has been, Gary, in all their games pretty much so far.
I was really disappointed in Glenfin and parts of their game. Like, they brought some initiative definitely to the game plan. Like, Daniel Mclean, they didn't start him corner forward. They started, who's been their sweeper in all the games, they started him wing back, and they actually pulled him off Marty Boyle. So it was a smart enough move there. So it's because they knew that Marty would drop back for Glenty's end. But their own kickouts, I mentioned they struggled in the last game with their own kickouts. They were doing the exact same thing. They just kicked it out the middle, hoping to win the breaks. But Glenty's absolutely destroyed them in the breaks. If you can't get primary possession, Charlie, you're not going to get into the game. I just thought Niamh Connell, even though down to 14 men, never looked in bother. So they just look to me a team that is, they look a team that's so well coached. Yeah. Like you can see when they're attacking, they have a clear plan of attack. So they have, and I'm trying to work it out game by game here, but bits are broken down. But
I'm sure Eudora or St. Eunice will be interested in talking to you if you can figure it out this week what it is.
But they do exhibit, like you can see, they play with massive width when they're on the attack. They try and get nearly 2 players out in each line. When they keep huge depth inside, so they do as well. By Charlie McGuinness hardly ever leaves the 6 yard when they're on the attack and is a focal and drawing the opposition in there. They get runners very similar to Donegal do and go right into the end line to pull more men in, and then that leaves the likes of Kieran Thompson, who's shooters, leaves more space in and out around the 45 and around the top of the D. So to me, they're possibly up there as being the best coach team at the minute.
And the most dominant team. John, just briefly, we'll go back to the St. Eunice situation. They'll not have learned much from yesterday. They won't mind a handy game going through, but they have a big test coming up now. We'll talk about that later on. But Bundoran, so disappointing.
So disappointing, because I was nervous going into the match because Conor Park was out and Conor O'Donnell was out, and I think Rory Carr struggling again with the shoulder. So I was worried. Just worried because you're always worried. You don't want to get But no, Charlie, I thought St. Eunice were very good in the first half. Especially say Keelan Ward, who I'm sometimes critical of Keelan because I know how good he can be and he can frustrate me, and he knows that. I've told him enough times, but he started off well, Charlie, and he laid down a marker and he ran through the middle, and I thought we were very sharp, Charlie, and I thought our third goal was brilliant. I thought as good as goals I've seen in a long time in O'Donnell Park. It was so slick, Charlie, and great touches from the boys, and they played it well. So there's no doubt about it, Charlie, that I think St. Eunice are better than they were last year. I think they've improved a bit. They were good last year. Still a young team, Charlie, and they're improving, but a massive test now against Glenty. So
they've depth, Alan. I mean, they took 5 off or 6 off the bench yesterday. All contributed. All players that you could start in the first 15. That wouldn't make a lot of difference.
Yeah, sure. Even before the game with Conor O'Donnell ruled out, you saw Rory Kavanagh starting midfield, and
Conor Park ruled out.
Yeah,
Aaron Deeney came in
as well. Yeah, and then even I think at the end the game might have petered out, but for young Conor O'Donnell, I think he came on with a point to prove he had started the first couple of games. He had a hand in Owen McGeehan's goal, which was saved, and then he scored 2 himself. So I suppose at the end the roof just totally fell in Bundoran, because it was actually probably hard to watch, even as someone from Letterkenny at the end for them.
I was commentating on it. It was hard to commentate on.
Well, after 2 years ago they suffered a similar sort of loss, but it was like 8-13. They scored 3-12 that day, mind you, against Gweedore.
That's right.
Where last year they took Gweedore to extra time, haven't been 8 down.
Yeah.
But they've made great progress this year, but they shouldn't forget that, I suppose. But it's just it's a very difficult way for them to finish.
But you'd wondered, have they made progress? Like, what progress is that there? Bundoran getting hammered like that. Like, we keep chatting about it here, Terry, I'm sorry to cut in there, but these teams are beating teams at their own level, and as soon as they come up against them. They're not making any progress at all.
There was a game I was dying to see in the championship, but it never happened because the draw was Bundoran against St Michael's. The two teams I think are very similar. Just to see then, it really give us an idea who is number 5 in the county, because people were talking about Bundoran pre-last weekend, but then post after the weekend, people are nearly thinking, now St Michael's are ahead of them.
After the St Eunice performance, you wouldn't have given St Michael's much chance of going to Kilcar, and you know, they nearly got there, so it's a funny old game.
Knockout football's different.
Absolutely. And talking about knockout football, just one of the relegation playoffs was played at the weekend. Ardra beat Dunlow 111. Was it 111 to 11 or 111 to 12? It's
111 to 12,
yeah. Alan, just briefly, you were at that. Ardra deserve it?
Yeah, Ardra had only scored 3 points against Bundoran the week before. They put up 1-3 in the first 10 minutes, and that was kind of the cushion they worked off. Dunlow come back into it a few times, but like from the 5 games Dunlow have played this year, they haven't lost any of them by a big margin. They've played a lot of teams.
I think the score difference for the 5 games is -12.
Yeah, I think so. That's right. And then again the last night, but 5 games in the melting pot, they've lost all 5.
Yeah.
And now they're still in the relegation playoffs. So, like as I said, if they had got 1 winner than 5, they wouldn't be in this situation now.
Absolutely.
So Ardra, come out well, and they'll be just glad to put them
as they do. Ardra hanging on to their senior status. Congratulations to them. Milford played Termon, and that game was postponed because of the COVID-19 situation in Termon. Hopefully that one will be played on Friday night again. The losers of that will play Dunlow, and the losers of that will be relegated. Right, we're going to take a short break there. When we come back, we'll be looking forward to the semi-finals at the weekend. It's Neath Connell against St Eunan's, Gweedore against Kilcar.
Get your car free at DMG. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. 1, buy a used car at DMG. 2, like us on Facebook. 3, tag your friends on Facebook.
And you're welcome back, and thanks to Kellys at the Mountaintop for their support. Just to remind you of their steak dinners for only €11 on Saturday and Sundays. And we'd also like to congratulate Marcin and his staff. They're celebrating 9 years in business, so thanks to them for their support. Well, before the break, we looked at the quarter-finals. It leaves a semi-final line-up of the reigning champions, Neath Connell taking on St Eunan's, and last year's beaten finalist Gweedore taking on Kilcar. So 3 teams that have won the championship in the last 3 years are there. St Eunan's are the odd team out, taking on the champions. John, might I suggest, as a St Eunan's man, you would have preferred to play one of the other 2 rather than Neath Connell?
Possibly, Charlie, because there's no doubt about it, Neath Connell, the number 1 team in the county. So maybe from that point of view, to get get a young team into a final. I think I said that last year would be a great stepping stone for them. So probably better. And looking at the form of Gweedore and Kilcar at the weekend, you probably thought, yeah, we'd have a better chance against them. But listen, if you're going to win a charity, you're going to probably have to beat Niamh Conall along the way. So listen, it's there now. We'll have to take it. Kieran Thompson went off injured, so it could be. He'd
be a big loss.
Big loss.
Oh,
absolutely a big loss. So
you hadn't Conor O'Donnell
or Conor Park, but I think they should be all right. I think maybe only more precautionary than anything. They were there maybe if they had to be if they were needed. So
great game between these two in McCool Park last year. Kick of a ball between them. That's always there. Yeah. Do you expect the same, or is Glenty's?
I think Glenty's have definitely improved. I've said that all year. As much as I've seen of them and much you can hear from them, you take a thing like I've been thinking about, like Dermot Malloy is on the Glenty's team this year. He hasn't been on it this last couple of years, so he's obviously doing something different to get on that team this year. And that's what I think the Niamh Conall players are doing. They're all dedicated, Cherry. They all want to be on that team because they know they have a great chance of winning. So as Gary said, they're probably very, very well coached. And Martin Regan's been around now, and they've great stability, Cherry, and they know what they're about. But big Cian Gallagher's not there this year, and if Kieran Thompson's injured, you don't. Everything looks grand, Cherry, until a few wee things go wrong, and next thing the thing can come.
Matches week on week, that happens, Sean.
Exactly. Kieran Thompson will be a massive loss, and it'd be, I think the St. Jonas boys would love to hear that. If Kieran Thompson was missed, because he's a big player for them. Glenty's have improved, Cherry, as I said earlier. St. Jonas definitely have improved, and just looking maybe a couple of things. We could have 4 or 5 players that didn't play last year against Glenty's. Peter Devine wasn't there. Peter McAnuff didn't start. Shane O'Donnell's new to the team this year. Brian Mack was only coming on as a sub last year. He's playing very well. Pádraig McGettigan, I'm not sure where they started last year. So St. Jonas have brought that. I know it's a young team and they're all young players, but to me they've definitely helped the team this year.
Yeah.
And I definitely think we're better than last year. Whether we're good enough to beat them, Charlie, in the championship game, we'll find out at the weekend.
Yeah. Are they too young, Alan?
No, I don't think so. A lot has been made of the fact they haven't beat one of the other 3 teams in the Big Four since 2017, I think. But in that time frame, they lost to Niamh Conall last year by a point. Niamh Conall got to an Ulster final. They went down to Gweedore and drew with Kilcar this year.
Yeah.
And even this year, they're saying that the Big Four have waltzed into the semi-finals. The way the league situation finished, Unions have played 4 of their 5 games against teams that came in the top 6.
Yes.
So the only team I think they played that wasn't in that top 6 was Kellybeg. So I think they're definitely going the right direction. And it's funny, I think last year this was kind of, this was the first game and this was, the side dish.
Yes.
Kilcar playing Gweedore. I think now this is the one.
This is the big one.
I think so this weekend.
Interesting. That's an interesting point.
It's much of a muchness, really, but I think it is. There's an interesting focus on it this year because Unions are definitely on the rise, and Niamh Conall are a better team probably than they were this time last year as well. So.
You give them any chance against the champions, Gary?
100%. To me, I'm really disappointed because I was hoping the two of them would be kept apart, and I thought it'd be a brilliant final. So I wanted to see the two of them because I was expecting the two of them to win their semi-finals if they'd have met either of the other two. I just thought yesterday that you talked about their strength and depth. I thought Keelan Ward is the finish for the goal yesterday. He ran solo in the ball, his right foot cut in and finished it with his left foot then. So he did exhibition and class. I think they're so strong defensively. Peter Devine this year has just brought a real solidness and a rock there. He sits in there as a sweeper around the 20 metre around the D, so he is, and lets nothing down the middle. Is really aggressive, so he is. Aaron Deeney, a player I know well and have huge time for from coaching.
Great battle with Jimmy Brennan yesterday.
He got the upper hand of him. He was brilliant. And I would have every confidence in Aaron from working on his time in the college and in the 20s. Thought Eamon Doherty did a good job, and Gary Clancy as well. Probably there's more even in Eamon going forward. So there is on the far side. Rory Kavanagh, calm and influence around the middle as well. You need the wee bit of experience. Probably last year, remember against Glenty's, there were a lot of people calling out that Conall Dunn should have come on to give him a bit of experience at the end. I think they've learned from that, so they have, and to see Rory starting, I think people are talking about it, maybe they're going to put Rory the same way they put St. Dunn, but it looks as if they're going to maybe learn from that there and use Rory. I think you'll definitely see Rory, well, he mightn't start this game, but I think you'll definitely see him being brought in. I think their intensity, the way that they run with the ball, they have legs all over the pitch, their speed is second to none. If you're looking for a chink, so you are, and this is going to be a game.
That's what we're here for, to look for chinks.
This is going to be a game of fine margins. They probably struggle with a 45 free ticker. So there, and to me, Charlie, this is going to be fine margins. I think we're looking at an extra time here, possibly at the weekend.
Are we looking at a very cagey game here? Both teams showing one another ultimate respect type of thing, and will the fear of losing override the desire to win.
Well, if you look back at Eunice and Kilcar, I think both teams must have tricked that day. They had an opportunity to go for it, and both of them were probably overly defensive that day. I think you'll probably see the same. Eunice will probably have a wee bit more fear considering what Alan's on, but they haven't beat one of the big teams over the last number of years. But I just think that they have so much strength and depth, and they ooze class. Like Brian Mack, like I had him in the 20s in 2018, Charlie, and he wasn't even near the Union senior panel at the time. He's just about making their reserve team. So he has, and there's something that I just liked about him in 2018, and I'll tell you what it is. He's just a brilliant ball player. He never gives the ball away, and he's as honest as the day is long. If you told Brian he would to do 20 star jumps before the match, and he would do 30. So he would, like, he's just.
I think Maxie made the point on me in commentary yesterday that he's won man of the match in every game he's played in so far.
He's going to have a house in Dublin soon enough.
He's going to have 3 or 4 houses in Dublin by the looks of it. All right, listen, let's move on to the other one. Gweedore Kilcar. John, they'll be happy to be there after what happened at the weekend. They're going to have to clear their heads and have a look, and I'm sure they will, and right, what happened, what went wrong, because they know that if either one of them bring that form into the game against the other, they're both not going to play badly again this week, so both are going to have to really be at it.
Yeah, Cherry, and I think with Gweedore, Cherry, they like a challenge. They like maybe people to write them off, and they're getting plenty of that this week now, and say they're getting plenty of that down there yesterday after McCool's putting them to the pin of their collar, and they like nothing more than sticking it up people and giving it, say, listen, we haven't gone away, and how dare you disrespect us, that's what you want as a manager.
Absolutely.
And no better crowd than Gweedore to come with that attitude, and I think they will have that, Cherry. They'll have no love of Kilcar, they'll have no fear of Kilcar. They'll have they'll have enough quality there to get their matchups right. Two teams, Cherry, with plenty of quality. From the weekend, I think Gweedore got more of a kick up the backside than Kilcar. I know Kilcar were stretched, but they were always they were always leading, Cherry. They were never went back. Like Gweedore went 3 points behind, and got 4 points. And like Ethan Harkin's equaliser was brilliant. Like
Cole come on,
because no doubt if it had went wide, James Connors would have blown it up. I don't think he would have played kind of the last kick of the game. But he got it, and they played on. So. Cherry, it could be a classic. They are two good teams, Cherry, full of class, full of great players. But can Gweedore get back up to the levels, Cherry, that we've seen in the last 2 years? It's hard to know. On form, they're not going that well, but they're still in the semi-final. Kilcar, have Paddy McBurty and the McHughes. To me, Cherry, I think Kilcar might just nick them.
Yeah. Gweedore bullied them last year in the semi-final. Kilcar didn't perform. Now, I keep going back to the point, Alan, that it was a low-scoring game, and I think Gweedore only scored 3-5. They got 3 goals, and a couple of the goals should have been avoided. Kilcar just did not perform because Gweedore brought a game plan with them that Kilcar couldn't deal with. I mean, Kilcar will have to have learned from that, but are they good enough then to jump on the bus and get it?
I think, as John says, like Gweedore have gone further than any other Donegal team. They've taken the Ulster Championship home, so like they've walked the walk. They know themselves they haven't been playing that great, and maybe this is what they need, is this sort of a game. I think last year I kind of fancied them in that game last year because I thought it was the Gweedore forwards against the Kilcar defenders more last year. This year I think it's more the opposite, because the Kilcar forwards, like the likes of the Mcleans and Conor Doherty, who we speak about a lot here, they've really lifted the level there, where there was obviously kind of a dependency before on Patrick and things like that.
And Stephen's going well again.
They're all going well from an offensive point of view, so I think this is the sort of game where I don't think they're going to stand and show each other that much respect. This could be one they're just going to go for. It could be like a more exciting game to watch perhaps than the other one. So no, I wouldn't write them off, and I think they know themselves. They have a couple of creases that need ironed, you could say, after the weekend, but at the same time both them and Gweedore still, whatever happened to them, they both managed to set themselves and they didn't get through. So
Gary, I mean, if you were in the Kilcar camp this week, would you be saying, boys, we've got to play our natural game? Our natural game is offensive, let's go for it, let's really attack them? Or are you going to go in with that sort of caution that I thought they went into the semi-final with last year, and it cost them in the end because they didn't concede a lot, but they got nowhere near the number of scores you'd expect them to get?
And probably when they have been caught and the game's gone past, it hasn't been a shootout. Like, there at the weekend, 3-14 to 3-12, that suits Kilcar.
That's more like Kilcar.
If it's lower, like it was in the O'Donnell Park, it was 1-9 each. So it was, that's then when their dodgy territory is. So your point's bang on. So it is like, and listen, it's probably, after the games of the weekend, I think Kilcar are favourites to go through, so they are. They're missing Andy Mclean, who came off the bench, so you expect him to be back in. Barry Shovlin came off the bench as well, who started every game. But I couldn't understand Barry McGinley. I've given a lot of praise to here of what I thought was their best man marker to date, and he didn't pick up any of the men inside for St Michael's the weekend. He ended up actually being free, so he did. So he's possibly even someone who could play full back, or even, I was even thinking myself, Mark McHugh has great fielding ability, so he has to be able to bust out of the back. He's another possible option, because they're going to be, I'll say Brian O'Donnell's going to be struggling, Charlie, to get it ready for this weekend. Like Mark McHugh, I thought the last day his first half was brilliant. He linked the play so many times and creates that extra man from being free at the back. John was on, but Ryan was quiet 100% until the last quarter. The last quarter, when the game was in the melting pot, he thought, right, I need to do something here. And he just caught a couple of kickouts, made the run for the goal, just tore St Michael's open for the goal, threw the ball across. So he did. So he's able to change the game when he's able to turn it on like that. I think Conor Doherty, we give him massive praise every week. It was brilliant again, carried the ball time after time for them. A man maybe we haven't talked a lot about this year, and he's leading by example, is Maddie Mclean, the captain. So he is. Like, I remember when we played them in 2016 in the final, we wouldn't have talked a lot about him before the final. He'd been well down the list of priorities, but I think he's just, if you were playing against him now, he'd be a lot higher up. I think he's so accurate, Charlie. Like, he got 1-5 the weekend. I know he got a couple of frees, but he's so accurate from play as well, and he's leading.
The frees were difficult.
And like one of his frees, we were laughing in the press box, like, he had it in front of the Kilcar dugout, so he had into the dressing rooms first half. James Connors, the ref, gave it wide. The two umpires gave it wide. And Maddie shouted and roared and protested. So he did. And he got the linesman, Eugene McHale, between himself and the Kilcar dugout, he got it overturned that the point was given. Charlie, this is a 2-point game I'm talking about here. So he is leading by example.
And most people felt that was the wrong decision.
It was. We thought from the press box that it was wide. So it was. But like, they have so much. So for them.
What I'm getting back is, go out and play the game they know best.
Absolutely.
Don't go out apprehensive. Don't go out with fear. You might as well get beat trying to win it as get beat trying to not lose it. You know,
especially when it's not that
exactly.
To you.
All right. Okay, we're going to take another break, and we're going to come. No, in fact, before we go to the break, I'll just go to the Gidor Kilcar and ask John.
I'll go for Kilcar, Charlie.
Okay.
I think I will too. I think more of them are going well this year than Gidor.
All right, Kilcar.
Gidor are lacking that mojo, Charlie, and for that reason I'm going to go against them. I think Kilcar will be able to bring it.
Okay. St Eunice and Eve Connell.
Can't wait for it. This is really, really hard. Like, as I said earlier, I think it's going to be a draw. It's going to go to extra time.
And who's going to win it? That's all I'm interested in.
Practice your penalties.
If you're going to really make me push it all, I think Union's probably slightly are just showing, fine margins here of more intensity, because
you're going for St Eunice.
Niamh Connell's intensity has been brilliant. I'm not down on them here, but
right, that's a St Eunice. Alan.
I'm pretty much similar to what Gary says. I think this could go a long way as well. They might as well practice their penalties. God knows.
Another fence sitting here, John. Don't you get up on that big fence now, John.
Having a break now.
I said the same here last year, Charlie. My head says Glenties, my heart says St Eunice. But you know, if you give me £100 and I was a neutral, I wouldn't call it. Slightly, you can't write off Glenties. I think they're favourites.
Well, I was going for New Connell all year, so we'll just edge that.
We'll stick with them. Fair comments, tight one. All right, we're going to take another short break. Thanks to Kellys for their support. We'll be back to look at the Intermediate Championship. That has reached the last four as well. Some interesting matches at the weekend to look back over, and some good semi-finals to look forward to. Rejoin us in a moment or two.
get your car free at DMG. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. 1, buy a used car at DMG. 2, like us on Facebook. 3, tag your friends on Facebook.
And you're welcome back once again. We're going to move on now to the Intermediate Championship. Thanks to Kellys at the Mountain Top for their support. Remember, their €11 dinners on Saturday and Sunday evenings. And again, congratulations to them. They're 9 years in business, and we really appreciate their support. John, we're moving on to the Intermediate Championship. Very similar situation. The teams that finished first to fourth in the league section have gone through. Rua 15, Nivora 1-7, Cloughaneely 13, Red Hughes 9, Buncrana 4-15, Fanet Gales 4-5, Niamh Columba 13, Malin 1-7. Only the Buncrana game where there was 10 points between them, a clear-cut victory. The rest would have been close enough games, not too much in it, 5 points, 3 points, 4 points, but it's left us with a semi-final set up now of Rua versus Niamh Columba, Cloughaneely versus Buncrana. I was at the Buncrana game, hugely impressed going forward. Not so good at the other end. I was just looking at what they conceded so far in the championship. It's too much, really. But with the way they're scoring, yes. You know, the Jigger 3-5. He was apt. He looked like the guy that was around in 2014. He looks sharp. He looks fit, and his finishing was something else.
That's great to see, Jerry, because he's been plagued with injuries and he's a good young fella. Like, and to start in an All-Ireland final, you know, he's gone through tough times, and you know he's a good young fella, and it's good to see him flying there. But we've spoke about Buncrana going forward. 5 championship victories in intermediate in their first year up. Exactly, and they'll be happy with that there. And they've got John Campbell, Keelan McGonigal, Owen Doherty. We spoke about them all before. They are good going forward, as you say, Charlie. 5 goals, or letting in 4 goals at the back. Yeah, you know, Big Sweeney probably caused a lot of balls. He got 4 goals. He got 4. You know, was he playing full forward? Yeah. He was in full forward and in and out. And the first goal was just a fingertip thing, a big long ball. But there was a couple of great goals, great finishes by him. You know? So you know, Buncrana will be worried about that there. But they're going well, Charlie, in an intermediate semi-final after winning junior last year. Yeah, and they'll go into full confidence. They will. They're going to be taking on Cloughaneely. It's actually Jigger's back-to-back hat-tricks. Got a hat-trick in the previous game. Did he? Well. Yeah, against Niamh Column Kill, but they conceded 3-12 that night as well, as you said. So that's backing up your theory. That was against Niamh Column Kill. That's right. A lot of conceding. Right, they're going to be playing Cloughaneely. I was down at the game on Saturday evening against Red Hughes. I interviewed Kevin Mulhern afterwards, and he listens to the podcast, by the way. He said to me, "Oh, listen, I hear you." But typical Cloughaneely, started off first 8 or 10 minutes flying. Stephen McMenamin was missing for Red Hughes. Obviously, you can't understate how big a blow that was to them. Jason McGee didn't start for Cloughaneely, came in the second half. But Cloughaneely awfully got a greyhound, and then 3 points up and then stopped for a wee while, and then Red Hughes came back. I think it was 7-3 at half time. They brought Jason on fairly early in the second half, changed the game, his presence. He scored a 45, he scored another point. Keeper Luke Kelly made a brilliant save to deny him a goal, but they still only won the game by 4 points, and Red Hughes had their chances as well. But they're still in the semi-final against Buncrana, so they are where they want to be. Definitely, it's a tough place to go down there as well. And I suppose at the weekend, all 8 home teams won. Yeah. So Jason is obviously huge for them, and I think the fact that they're going to be playing against Keelan McGonigal next week as well, that'll be a great matchup. Yeah, they'll probably want Jason in from the off in that game, because he seemed to just help them get over the line the last night. As we say every week, they don't do things easily, but they're still there, and I think these 4 teams, there's very little between them. Say if you're Cloughaneely, I think if you could have picked one of the 4 teams you want to play, you might go for Buncrana, the fact they're just up from junior. As I said, there's a big kind of debit and credit column with Buncrana with the way they score and concede. But I was speaking to somebody on, good point you make. I was speaking to somebody connected to the Cloughaneely club, I won't say who, but it made a very interesting point. They're happy with the draw. They don't underestimate Buncrana by any stretch of the imagination, because, as I said, they've won 5 things, but they've already played Rua and Niamh Columba in this championship. That's right. So this is completely new territory for them, and he thinks that might be a help to them, rather than, you know, playing Niamh Columba again, a high scoring draw, playing Rua, a high scoring 2-point victory. I think that's what they meant by it. You know, it's no disrespect to Buncrana at all, because like 5 from 5 after coming up from junior Ulster Junior final last year, you can't really knock that. Like, so
the scores, like Cloney don't score massive amounts when you look at what
what they do when they need. They scored 3-12 against Airua. They scored 3-10, was it, or 2-13 against Naomh Columba?
Yeah, and like they were down in Ballyshannon too without important players as
That's
well.
That's right, yeah. So if you go 8 or 9 points ahead of them, look out. That's when they start to play then.
Yeah,
you're really in trouble then if you go 9 points ahead of them.
And John Fitzgerald's a big help to them back this year from the cruise ship. You know, when he got man of the match and kicked a few points there, in corner forward. So
they've good players. They have
good players. Kevin Mulhern ahead was very good too.
Very good. Kieran McGeady, dangers on the ball, like going forward. You know, and big Martin Maguire midfield. They took him off near the end, but very effective.
See, Division 1 is hard on them as well, Charlie. That's the one thing.
Oh, that's the thing, because every game's a battle for them. Yeah. Every game's a battle. Gary, Airua 15, Nivora 1-7. Nivora had flattered to deceive, some would have said, in the first 3 matches. Not so good after that, but they came back and they give Airua a fairly good rattle for it, because I was following on Twitter on Airua and they were saying the squeaky bum time here. They got to within a point or two of them.
Yeah, and like looking at was a repeat of the quarter-final last year, Charlie, and it was wild one-sided. Airua beat them out the gate, so they did. I can't even remember, it was well over double scores. So it was in Glenfin that day. I was expecting something similar. So it was at the weekend, because, as you said, Nivora lost their last group game, so they did, when they met one of the so-called bigger teams, so they did, and they cruised through the first 3 games. Nivora, probably at the start of the year, Charlie, they would have been, I mean, after getting relegated to Division 4 the previous year, their goal would have been to stay an intermediate championship. So to me, they've done more than enough, and they'll be happy with where they're at this season. Airua, I would be a bit worried, you know, with maybe, I know it's a 5-point victory, but from talking to people, it wasn't overly convincing. So it was.
Alan, you were there. What did you think?
At the game, it was a strong one, wasn't it?
A strong win, in the first half that Airua were playing into. Philip Patton was really the only person who got kind of to grips with it. He ended up scoring like 8 points, 4 from play. But Nivora got a goal from Alton Boyle just before half time to go 2 ahead, so they would have went in with a spring in their step. Owen Martin was causing a lot of problems too in the full forward line when he got it. But at half time you thought, you know, it's going to turn around here.
The one's going to be a big factor.
Going to get ahead, and that's basically what happened in the third quarter. You thought then they were going to win comfortably, maybe 8 or 10, but then Nivora came back into the game again. They got back to like 3 or 4 behind, but Airua had kept them at arm's length. Not probably their best performance, more workmanlike, but no more than Cloughney and Buncrana, and I think they're a big player in this championship as well, and it was very awkward conditions. So
and as Gary was saying there, I didn't realise that Brian Feeder was manager of Nivora, a man I know a long time, and a good character and fair play to him, and I heard him interviewed and read him the gate afterwards.
Gavin Ward's manager.
Well, Brian Feeder
must be his
Brian,
coach, is it?
Maybe it's Gavin's his coach, but you know, he said it's a young team and they have a lot of turnover of players this last couple of years in emigration that they've hit hard, so they'll be delighted.
They
fair play them, they played a lot. So you know,
Damien O'Donnell said on the stream that the 2 sides had played in 2011 under 16 final. Airua had 9 of them players playing on Saturday. And Nivora had just the 1, so there's such a turnover there. They've done really well to
the other one, Naomh Columba 13, Alan 1-7, tight again. I thought Naomh Columba would won easier than that, but they didn't, so I mean, maybe a question mark about them, but I mean, Malin happy enough to go down there. Good team.
Malin have quality, Charlie, they always had, and you know, just depends what personnel they can get out in any given day. Long trip over there, I think we've seen 2 hours 20 minutes, you know, so an awful long journey, but I suppose, you know, if you look at it now, Naomh Columba and Ballyshannon in a semi-final, Jerry, they would have a great history down through the years in finals and semi-finals at senior level, and just goes to show you they're at intermediate now, but you know, that's where it's at. But that, keep saying it, that intermediate championship's dynamite, and you know, anyone can put anyone out now, and the top 4 teams probably still there, so it's anyone's now.
Cloughney beaten last year in the final, Alan, big regrets about that, because that was there for them as well, and it was Brendan McCole made a dramatic goal line stop, a potential goal that I think would have turned it in Cloughney's favour. Obviously there was emotional issues last year as well down in that area before the final, but they're back where they want to be in a semi-final now. They've got to push on, obviously, but likewise Airua, Naomh Columba and Buncrana will all be feeling they've got a big chance.
I would put Airua on the same level as Cloughney, Charlie. I think, we said a few weeks ago, I think they're marginally the best 2 teams.
They had 2 great games in the semi-final last year.
Absolutely, and it just went down to a point as well. And like chatting to people in Ballyshannon the last day, they haven't been, I think, in the senior championships since 2010. They played St Eunan's, John, if you remember rightly. So like that's just probably too long for them. It's just so difficult to get out. Like people were saying, would this be a bit fair if you let both finalists going to the senior championship, get two
Relegate
teams
two
up and
teams.
relegate two teams
I'll
just
tell
for
you
a
what,
turnover.
it's not a bad call. Not a bad call.
It's hard to get it right, Jerry. Like you look on Tyrone now, you've got Donegal and Tulloch and the county final, and they played each other in 2014 in an intermediate final.
That's right.
So
Dungannon haven't been in a final for a long
36 years.
36 years.
And like we said here before, if you look at the senior championship, say from St Noel's, who finished 9th, you go down then as far as
Glenfin won it the previous year.
That's
finished
right.
8th.
Yeah, and 2 quarterfinals. But if you go from 9th in the senior championship, St Noel's down to 4th in the intermediate groups was Rua. Is there an awful lot of difference really there?
Very little, I would say.
Very little.
Right then, Gary, Rua and Neve Columba.
To me, Charlie, I think Neve Columba and Cloughanilly are the 2 form teams at the minute, and that's the 2 teams I expect to be playing the final.
Alan, go for your 2 winners there.
I went a few weeks ago, Rua and Cloughanilly, so I might as well just stick to that.
All right.
Yeah,
No conviction.
Cloughanilly anyway, Charlie, and I wouldn't be too sure. I haven't seen enough of Neve Columba and Ballyshannon, but maybe Ballyshannon just with a bit more quality.
Okay. Just some stats, Gary. You like the stats. Buncrana's average score for 21.4 against 13.6. That's the best of any of the 4.
Yeah, that's good.
Neve Columba's average 18.2 for 12 against. Pretty good as well. Cloughanilly 17.6 for, which is worse than Buncrana's and Neve Columba's, and 14.8. So the gap, their scoring average is very, very close. Rua, their average scoring 14.8, which is significantly the lowest, but they've only conceded 13.4 as well. So very little to choose between them. And
I suppose if Cloughanilly aren't careful, Jigger and these boys could light again, you know.
Tell you what, I'm telling you,
Charlie, you were saying they play 15 on 15.
They play an open game. I love watching them, from a neutral point of view, but to be involved with them.
I wouldn't want to be marking Jigger one-on-one.
No,
anyway.
I'll tell you, that could be the one in the losing the game, because the form that he's in, and I'm so delighted because he's such a lovely young fella, Derek O'Connor. He's had such a tough time, but if they don't get the grips with him, because Fanet couldn't yesterday. They just couldn't. He was when a forward's in that kind of form, John, that no matter what happens.
Was he 1-on-1, Charlie? Was he?
Sorry?
Was he 1-on-1?
Oh, for a while. And then it was 2-on-1, but it wasn't any difference.
Michael Sweeney scored 4 goals against them.
Aye.
While Jigger got a hat-trick the previous game, as we said earlier. Young Shane Monaghan got a hat-trick against them as Jigger scored a hat-trick. So
there you are.
It'll be entertainment if nothing else.
Absolutely. Okay, the intermediate playoffs at the weekend. Neve Columkill 1-3, Burt 1-8. Big shock there, guys. Neve Columkill
huge.
Could go back to junior football. I mean, I know they're going to have another chance, but very few people would have expected Burt. I know it's a big derby and all that sort of thing, but I mean,
well, that's another thing on the Buncrana. You think that they scored 3-12 against Buncrana, and then they scored 1-3.
1-3 against Burt.
They'll be looking Farmer back for the.
I was speaking to a couple of people in Buncrana who were at the game and said Neve Columkill were very poor, desperate, John. Very poor. The other game, Neve Breed 1-11, Neve Ulton 2-5. So that was tight. Big local derby there, but that's Neve Breed safe along with Burt. So the final relegation playoff now, Neve Columkill against Neve Ulton. The losers go to junior football next year. The winners stay up. Just to confirm about the hurling, because we understand the semi-finals are going ahead next weekend as well. Setanta versus Burt and Buncrana against St Eunan's, and the draw was made for the junior semi-finals yesterday. We mentioned them here last week. The semi-finals will be Rua against Cairndonagh and Setanta against Donegal. That's it. We're going to take another break. When we come back, these 3 guys will have disappeared, and Chris McNulty will have magically appeared in the studio here to talk about ladies football. The Donegal Centra's championships were played at the weekend, and 4 finals were played. We're going to hear about them. Chris attended 2 of them. Thanks to Kellys for their support, and we'll be back right after this.
get your car free at DMG. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. 1. Buy a used car at DMG. 2. Like us on Facebook. 3. Tag your friends on Facebook.
And you're welcome back, and thanks once again to Kellys Centra here at the Mountain Top for their support. Well, we've covered the men's championship, still a bit to go in all those championships, but the ladies championship, the Donegal Centra Stores championships, were completed yesterday with 4 finals, and many congratulations to the ladies board for running off their competition so smoothly and getting them finished up pretty much on time. Chris McNulty's joined me in studio now. We've moved the other 3 guys out. Chris extensively covered the ladies' championships this year again, and went to Balbafay yesterday expecting a real epic between Glenfin and Termon. It was an epic in some sense, with Yvonne Boner scoring 5 goals and Glenfin scoring 7, but not what we expected really in terms of the match.
Yeah, not what we expected at all. I think yesterday was one of them games we expected it to be in the melting pot right until the end, and the game to be sort of up for grabs right to the finish. But Yvonne Boner had 4 goals by the 20th minute, and you felt at that stage that Termon were sort of peeling water out of the ship. You know, the game just completely ran away from them before they got going. Like, there was a period early in the second half where Geraldine got a goal from a penalty, and they were within 7 points, which in ladies football
not a lot.
Isn't a huge, you know yourself, Charlie.
Yeah, goals can come quickly,
and especially a team like Termon. You were thinking they could mount a comeback here, but Glenfin, to their credit, got everything spot on yesterday in terms of their tactics, in terms of their matchups, and particularly in sort of how they nullified Termon's threat. But you know, those 4 goals had just given them, you know, it just sort of knocked the stuffing really out of Termon, and it, you know. It's sort of the game was kind of over really before it began. There's a sense of inevitability about it.
I was going to say to Chris, I went onto the streaming and I looked at the score, and I think it was 3-2 to 3 points, and I had to look twice thinking, is that score right? Because I just couldn't believe so early in the game that so many goals had gone in. And it looked at, even at that stage against a team like Glenfin, a mountain to climb for Termon. Yeah,
like by the 20th minute, Termon were 11 points behind. It was 4-2 to 3 points, and at half time it was 5-4 to 8. It was kind of one of those score lines yesterday where you were sort of having to think all the time, how many points is in this, you know?
Yeah,
and there were kind of more goals coming than points at a stage, and it was a strange game to watch. Like, but again, for Glenfin, they were coming with serious hurt. Charlie, yesterday was the 5th time those 2 teams have played in the final, and it's the first time, would you believe, that Glenfin have beaten Termon in the final to win it. So you know, yesterday would have meant an awful lot.
Great motivation,
an awful lot to Glenfin.
Interestingly, 14 scores for Glenfin, 12 scores for Termon. So in terms of scores, it was fairly balanced, but the fact that 7 goals went in made it so easy for Glenfin. Yeah, and at half time as well, we were actually making that point. It was 9 scores to 8. But there was 11 points between them. The goals were just the goals made the huge difference. I know that old cliche of goals winning games, but it certainly proved. Listen,
that
Chris, there's not much more we can say about Yvonne Boner than's already been said about her during her career. But 5-2 yesterday out of 7-7. I mean, she's a phenomenal footballer. Great backup from the rest of the team, but she finished off the scores once the opportunities came.
Yeah, look, Yvonne is an absolute class act. It's probably, you know, Donegal haven't had her as much as they have liked over the years, and you know, she's just a real predator in front of goal. Like a couple of times yesterday she was going through, and most other players would have settled for the point, but she's just goals all the time. And I spoke to her about this after the game, Charlie. It's an interview that people hear during the week about how her couple of years in Australian rules has really helped her. I mean, she was a great athletic, strong girl anyway.
Yeah.
But those couple of seasons of full-time sports training, you know, improving her just all round. I know it's a different sport, but she's still in that full-time environment, and you can just see it in her. She's just she's a class act, and you're right. There's, you know, not much more you can say about it. 5-2 sort of says it all. But all over the park yesterday, Glenfin had big performances yesterday. Big players, Charlie, in big games. You know, we've said this so many times before. Katie Hearn and Anna Marie Mclean sort of doubled up on Geraldine yesterday, and Geraldine still scored 1-5, all right. But you know, that threat, that deadly threat that Geraldine normally would
pretty
pose,
much nullified.
Well, now again, that was probably due to Glenfinn's out the field as well. The supply wasn't, you know, Termon just didn't get enough of ball into Geraldine, enough of good ball into Geraldine yesterday. A couple of times that the ball was coming in, and you know, and normally 60-40 Geraldine will win it, but Glenfinn had just sort of made sure that those percentages were down. And Karen Guthrie as well, a superb game. You know, we talk about Yvonne's finishing, but time and time again yesterday it was Karen Guthrie that was getting them on the ball and getting them moving and just making things happen. Again, a class act.
Ulster Club.
Yeah, Ulster Club, you know, I suppose it's been a strange year. Like, you know, nobody's really been sort of thinking too far ahead about what's what. But if you look at Termon last year, Charlie, Termon reached the Ulster final and were very unlucky and sort of felt they left that one behind. And, you know, maybe that was sort of playing in Termon's minds this year coming into this as well, where, you know, maybe we were thinking about Ulster. They'd got that good run last year. And again, there was a cup there for them last year, and they just left it behind them. You know, those couple of minutes at the end proved so costly. Glenfinn now, if they can regroup and, you know, they'll enjoy that one and as they have the right to do. But if they can get a focus for Ulster, they can and should be confident, you know, because, you know, you have to hand it to Paul Boner and his management team yesterday again. You know, you talk about the matchups, and if you look at Yvonne yesterday, Termon probably just left it 1-on-1 that wee bit too long, and you know, when they did change it up, but the game had just crept away from a wee bit further.
Big calls. Well done to Glenfinn. Commiserations to Termon. Earlier in the day,
I think just one more point on it. I think too, to sort of outline how good that one for Glenfinn yesterday was. If you look at the Termon team and the Termon squad, it's probably a much stronger rounded team and squad than it was 12 months ago. You know, if you look at the return of the likes of Roisin McCafferty and, you know, the youngsters like Ciara McGarvey that are coming, and those other young girls that were in last year and are now a year further in front, that it sort of maybe underlines
how good a performance was by Glenfinn. Well done to them. Earlier in the day, you were up on co-commentary, yourself and Brendan Maguire. I advise you to stick to the day job. And McClafferty did a great job on the commentary in the junior final, Killybegs against Downings. I attended a final in Glenfinn, and Brendan, I thought it was 2 years ago. I heard Brendan say it was 3 years ago, Killybegs and Glenswally. There was a B final, and Glenswally beat them on a free kick shootout. Killybegs, very impressive yesterday. Downings were right there with them for long periods, but deserved victory for the Killybegs team.
It was. The first thing I'll say about that game was an absolutely cracking advert for football, and particularly for ladies football. Two teams who left absolutely nothing out on the park in Glenfinn, and it was a good morning for football. The rain sort of came at the end of the game, but by and large it was great conditions. And the two teams and the two managements and everybody involved deserve immense credit. Killybegs, look, their big match winner was Suzanne White 2-9 in a county final. You know, we spoke there about Yvonne and Suzanne.
Great return.
You know, she's still a teenager and a class act, and she came out the field a bit yesterday as well, which, you know, doesn't tend to happen too much with them. But she came out the field a bit in the second half to get them on the ball. Where game, you know, Downings were creeping back and they needed to get on ball. They brought her out, but you know, her return of 2-9 was quite something.
And
else.
A key goal from Aisling Cunningham, because you'd mentioned just on the commentary about them moving her inside, and all of a sudden the ball's in and the ball's in the net. At that particular time, I felt that was a very important goal.
It was a big moment in the game, that, because funny, I was chatting to Aisling actually after the game yesterday evening about this. She was on a warning from the referee. She put in a couple of fouls, and she probably just needed to get herself not out of trouble, but just out of that mix where it was a crowded kind of middle of the park, and a lot of things were happening. So they probably just needed to give her a sort of breather and maybe get her out of the mind of the referee a bit. And you know, you felt when you seen her going inside, you know, she's a good, big, athletic girl, great pair of hands. And you were thinking, geez, if they can find this, and they just got the free kick, and she was going in, and Downings were probably a bit, you know, at sixes and sevens, wondering out who's going to pick her up and what's going to happen. Great delivery, perfect delivery by Suzanne. Aisling catches it and finds the bottom corner. It wasn't long before that Killybegs had led for the first time, and kind of from that, they just had enough about them. Downing's
key period in the second half, Chris, where Downing's came back to it, got a penalty. A goal then would have brought them back to a couple of points, I think, at that stage. I think the goalkeeper just tipped it over the bar, and then Killybegs went up the pitch and got a point to go 4 points ahead, and that was it really at that stage.
That probably was, like Downing's will point yesterday. You look at what Killybegs did at the other side. They took the big moments. Downing's, I think, had 4 goal chances yesterday. 2 of them, one of which was the penalty, was saved by Mairead Gallagher, who had a great game in goals for Killybegs. Veteran goalkeeper, knows all about big games. She got her hands to a couple of those shots. There was another one from Julie Trerty, who was going in 1-on-1 with the keeper, and Julie just seemed to sort of twig her hamstring just as she was coming in that sort of final stride before the shot, and it meant instead of getting the shot on target, she scuffed it wide. And moments like that,
big
in
moments
county
in
finals, they sort of turn the tide. Shannon McGrady again. Downing's a couple of players who really carried the fight yesterday, like Shannon McGrady. Jessica Roberts got on a sighted ball from kick-outs from Charlie Shevlin. Sinead and Lauren McBride had great games as well. Credit to Downing's as well. They really, really put it up. But Killybegs, look, they just had that wee bit extra that got them over the line.
Well done to them. So well done to Glenfin and Killybegs for those victories yesterday. There was also victories yesterday in the intermediate plate for Convoy against Ardra, and in the Junior A plate for Dunlow over Glen Swilly. Just to remind you, last week, of course, the intermediate championship went to St Knowles. The Junior B went to Urris, and the Junior B plate went to Burt. So congratulations to all them teams. And just on a final note, congratulations to the ladies board for running. I was out for the draw that night. They've run a very successful competition. Well done to their sponsors as well, Donegal Centra Stores, and I think our own Marcin Kelly, who's sponsoring our podcast, presented the cup to Glenfin yesterday. So overall, run off very well. Great competition. Credit to everybody, Chris.
Yeah, I suppose, look, we'd be critical of officials at times, but you have to give, the professionalism, the scheduling of the games as well is something that I've been very, very impressed with, where they haven't gone sort of head-to-head or toe-to-toe with other fixtures.
Yes.
The 10:30 in the morning, it's brilliant. When we see for ourselves, Charlie, we're able to get out to games, and you're not sort of pushing the ladies' thing to the side anymore. Credit to the teams. You look at the 4 teams yesterday, the size of their squads. It's great. It's great to see that level of girls, because sometimes you'd be worried at the drop off between minor and adult.
And the photographs in the other
football
matches would indicate the same thing. Big squads.
Absolutely. And the people involved in them as well. But to the ladies board themselves as well, like the programmes with teams laid out, and small things, Charlie, that people maybe outside of the likes of ourselves and the real hardcore supporters don't see. But they deserve immense credit, and the way they run the games this year in very, very difficult circumstances, and with supporters unable to go, they streamed all the games, and the PRO Maura McCrudden, who we deal with a lot, deserves a lot of credit as well, because she's sort of a one-woman band in terms of promoting
fantastic
from the county board. So we have to give Maura and her team a bit of credit as well.
Absolutely. All right, Chris, well done. Thanks for that. So that's it for this week. We know who the ladies champions are in all those different sections. Who will be in the final of the men's competitions at senior and intermediate level? Well, we'll know that this time next week, and we'll know who's in the semi-finals of the junior championship when those 2 quarter-finals are played. Thanks to Kellys at the Mountaintop for their support. Thanks to Tommy here at Full Tilt Studios for looking after us so well today again in our brand new studio over the last couple of weeks, which has been getting great reviews. We're delighted with it. We'll see you again next week.
The Donegal Sport Hub Donegal Daily Championship Podcast, brought to you in association with Kellys Centra, multi-award-winning store, Mountaintop Letterkenny, providing 24-hour service 7 days a week.